Hello YouTube, Keshav here and you are watching Your Average Programmer. And in today's video, I wanted to give you guys a crash course on version control systems. In today's day and age, it's omnipresent. It is used in every other project, and I think it's the basic thing from where I should start making some tutorials or courses. So I thought I wanted to cover my basis first by giving my version of the explanation of version control systems, and I will be talking around Git and Github and this version control system. But first, let's begin with a big picture of the entire version control system, or things that are nuts and bolts that is there in the version control system. When it comes to version control system, let's understand the why first. Why people use version control systems? Is it really necessary? The short answer is yes. It is a necessity, and it is also a very, very helpful tool if you know what you're doing. And for simplicity, I have really simplified the philosophy. The first one is to establish a timeline. So whenever you are making an application or say a website, you don't build a website or program it or code it in one day, right? You make it in a due course of time. Say you work on for a week or a month, and then you finish up the project. So first you make a header, then you add a body, and then you add a footer. But in real life, you don't really just add these three things and call it a day, right? You add a bunch of other components, features, multiple pages, and you have the application, you have the backend, you have the database. And if you really look at some of the products, say Facebook, it's been out there for a while, right? So people are still working on it, people are still building it, people are still working and making it bigger and bigger. Realistically, some projects die and people don't work on it and move on to the other one, but when you are making something, it goes on for a while. So you do want to create a timeline of the project. So you want to have different state of the application, and you want to have a feature or a power essentially to go back and forth in time and see how the application was, say, 1 month from today, and how the application was, say, 1 day ago. So if you want to do that, if you want to go into this universe of going back and forth in a project's timeline, that is where version control systems come into the picture. You create a snapshot, a commit for each state of the application. So if we go back to our earlier example, if I just add a header, I create a snapshot called header is completed, or just header. And say if I complete the body of my website, I'll write a commit, or I'll create a snapshot called body complete. And say, let's say once I do the footer, I can say footer complete. So I have three snapshots. So let's say if I want to go back in time and see how my code or my project was when I just had header, I could go back and see. And say if I just want to go back and see how my project was when I had just header and the body and not the footer, I could go back and see that snapshot. So that is what one of the core philosophy or the core use of version control systems. And the second thing is collaboration. In a real world, you will be working with a lot of your colleagues, and sometimes they may not be and it's not practical to work on a same machine, right? Everyone has their individual machines, everyone will be working from their own machines, and sometimes people will be working from different time zones, different cities, different places, but still people manage to work in a single project and get things done. So from collaboration perspective as well, version control systems do play a big role, and I think that really sums up the philosophy of version control systems. Moving on. Now, again, coming to the tools, we have, I think, a bunch of tools, but just like the 80-20 principle, some of these tools I may not be wrong, but I hope I'm not wrong, but some of these tools have dominated a big portion of the market. It might not be exactly 80%. In my experience, I've always used Git as the default version control system, and the platform to collaborate with that tool has always been GitHub. You also must keep in mind that Git and GitHub are two different things. They are separate. Git is your tool, your version control system that will help you to create snapshots, and GitHub is the platform that allows you collaboration with other people. To simplify, I think that might be an oversimplification, but it's a good starting point for beginners out there. So let's look at the command line tools. You have a couple of them at your disposal. I'm not sure if there is I'm not sure about these, as I haven't really used these. So as I said earlier, I've really been using Git for a really long time, and I think in most of your projects you will also be using this as your default command line tool or version control tool. There's something called GH that is released by GitHub that helps you to do a bunch of things. I'm not really sure about these. I just added them for some reference or some additional example to state that there are other tools that might be used in different places or different companies. In all sorts of companies that I've worked, or in all sorts of projects that I've worked, people really use Git as the version control system and GitHub as the platform to collaborate using the Git. And when it comes to graphical user interface tools, I don't really have much experience. I tried using GitHub Desktop and Git Kraken every once in a while. And there's also plugins in VS Code plugins. So VS Code also has some built-in plugins or some third-party plugins that you can install on top of it, and you can use that as sort of a graphical user interface as well inside your IDE. Then we have platforms. So these tools and these platforms, they need to work together. So let's say if I am just working on my machine, and if I'm not able to collaborate with my friend or my colleague in the project, then it doesn't really make sense, right? Maybe if I'm working on a header and my colleague is working on a footer, then let's say once we are done, we might have to exchange files using email or some other drive or cloud to exchange the files, and that's where these platforms come in. These platforms are seamlessly integrated with these command line tools. They provide a bunch of additional features and things that will simply make your life easier. There are a couple of popular platforms. The one that is again dominating the market is GitHub, and it's free for basic purposes. So if you are a student, if you are learning Git and GitHub, you can sign up with your email account and you get a free account, and you do get free repositories where you can push your projects, and you can also make them private for unlimited period of time. But say if you are an enterprise, you do have to, I think, take some paid plans or something. I'm not really sure about that. I don't really handle those kind of things in the company where I work, so I really don't know about that. And then there's GitLab, which I have heard or seen people using it, but I haven't really used it. And GitHub is a website, so you can go to the website and do all those things, additional features that you can do on the website, but you do have a command line tool from the GitHub as well called GH, and you can use that to further simplify your workflow. This was quite long, so I think I'll wrap up this video here today. I'll make a part 2 of this where I will be going into the commands of Git and GH and explain my 9 or 10 most used commands, and I'll also try to put them in a linear way based on my workflow, and I'll explain that how I use Git and GitHub in a real world scenario, and hope that helps. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to check out part 2. See ya. Bye bye.